A billionaire's daughter sits alone in a glittering ballroom, surrounded by laughter she can't hear, until one kind-hearted waitress walks in and changes her world forever. Stay till the end. This silent connection will speak louder than words. A grand ballroom glittering with diamonds, laughter echoing beneath golden chandeliers, and the air humming with soft violin music. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with the sweetness of freshly baked desserts drifted across the hall. Guests in designer suits and gowns clinked champagne glasses, each conversation louder than the last, trying to outshine the next. It was the kind of night where wealth didn't just sparkle, it demanded to be seen. But in the farthest corner, away from the laughter and the light, sat a little girl, small, delicate, and heartbreakingly quiet. Her name was Lila, the only daughter of billionaire Mr. Donovan, a man whose empire stretched across continents. Tonight was his grand celebration, 20 years of success, power, and prestige. Every major figure in the city was present, but the one person who mattered most to him wasn't part of the celebration. Lila sat at a round table covered in white silk, her small fingers tracing circles across the tablecloth. Her dark curls framed her innocent face as she watched people move around her like characters in a silent film. She couldn't hear the orchestra's melody or the burst of laughter from the guests. All she saw were mouths moving and glasses rising in rhythm she could never feel. She was born deaf, and though her father had given her the best doctors, tutors, and schools, nothing filled the gap of true connection. People always treated her like glass, fragile, pitiful, or worse, invisible. They would smile politely, pat her head, and then walk away, unsure of what to say or how to speak to her. It wasn't cruelty, it was ignorance wrapped in politeness. As the music grew louder and the lights brighter, Lila's world grew smaller. Every soundless cheer felt like another wall rising around her. She glanced toward her father, surrounded by business partners and reporters, his laughter loud and confident. He looked so proud, so alive, so far away from her. She wondered if he even noticed that she was there. The waiters moved swiftly between tables, carrying trays of desserts and glasses that shimmered like jewels. Among them was Maya, a young woman in her early 20s, wearing a crisp black uniform and a name tag that barely stayed pinned. It was her third shift that week, and though exhaustion tugged at her every step, her smile never faltered. She was used to the noise of wealth, the indifference of the elite, and the feeling of being invisible among people who thought they owned the world. But tonight, as she walked past the corner table, something caught her eye. A little girl sitting alone, quiet, motionless, with eyes that held the kind of sadness Maya had seen only once before, in her younger brother, who was also deaf. Maya paused, her hand tightening around the tray. She looked around. No one else seemed to notice the child sitting there. The guests were too busy celebrating success to see loneliness wearing a silk dress. The other waiters hurried past, focused on refilling glasses and collecting tips. Yet something in Maya's heart wouldn't let her walk away. She set her tray down for a moment and took a deep breath. Her steps were soft as she approached Lila, careful not to startle her. She placed a small plate of cupcakes in front of the girl, each one topped with pink frosting and a tiny sugar flower. Lila looked up in surprise, her big brown eyes blinking as if she couldn't understand why someone had stopped at her table. For a second, Maya just smiled, gentle, patient, warm. Lila gave a faint nod in thanks, but quickly looked away, her fingers resuming their quiet tracing on the tablecloth. Maya could sense the hesitation, the barrier that silence had built around her. But then she remembered something that her brother once told her. The best sound isn't what you hear, it's when someone finally understands you. So instead of walking away, Maya did something unexpected. She knelt down beside the girl's chair and began to move her hands slowly, forming shapes, letters, and gestures in sign language. "Hi," she signed. "My name is Maya." Lila's head snapped up instantly. Her eyes widened in disbelief, then shimmered with life. She hesitated, then lifted her hands and signed back softly. "You can talk like me?" Maya nodded, her smile growing. "Yes," she signed. "My brother is deaf too." For the first time that night, Lila's lips curved into a small, shy smile. The air around her changed. It wasn't heavy anymore. It was filled with something light, something warm. She began to sign faster, asking questions, telling Maya about her favorite color, her drawings, her pet cat back home. Her hands moved like wings set free after years in a cage. And Maya listened, not with her ears, but with her heart. The two of them talked in silence, yet it felt louder than the entire ballroom. Around them, people still laughed and danced, but neither of them noticed. In that quiet corner, among the glittering noise of the rich, a lonely girl had finally been heard. And for the first time in a long time, Lila didn't feel invisible anymore. During her short break, Maya walked toward Lila, balancing a silver tray filled with perfectly arranged cupcakes, their frosting glistening under the ballroom lights. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the weight, but from a feeling she couldn't quite name. Something about the little girl in the corner had drawn her in, a quiet pull stronger than the music or the chatter. As she reached Lila's table, she set a cupcake in front of her with a soft smile. The girl startled slightly, her big brown eyes flicking up just long enough to meet Maya's before darting back down to the tablecloth. Her small fingers fidgeted near her lap, and she mouthed something, silent, broken, and barely visible. Maya didn't need to hear it to understand. The way Lila's shoulders slumped said everything. She was used to being noticed only for a second, then forgotten. Instead of walking away, Maya knelt beside her, lowering herself to Lila's eye level. Her voice would have been useless, so instead, she spoke with her hands. Slowly, gently, she signed, "Hi, my name is Maya." Lila froze. Her head lifted, eyes widening in disbelief. The silence between them suddenly filled with something alive, a pulse of hope. Her lips parted, then curved into a trembling smile. She hesitated before moving her hands, uncertain, shy. "You know how to talk?" She signed back, her movements small, tentative, like a bird testing its wings. Maya nodded, her expression softening. "Yes," she signed. "I learned from my brother. He's deaf too." Lila blinked rapidly, her chest rising as if she were holding back 1,000 emotions that had nowhere to go. That one sentence, those few silent words, broke a wall that had stood around her heart for years. The little girl's hands began to move, first cautiously, then with growing excitement. She told Maya about her favorite color, blue, the color of her cat's eyes. She talked about how she loved to paint flowers because they didn't make noise but still spoke in color. She shared how her father always promised to learn sign language but never found the time, and how, at every party, she would sit and watch people laugh, pretending to laugh too, though she never knew what was so funny. Maya listened, really listened. Her hands moved with grace and rhythm, responding to every sign. Sometimes she laughed silently. Other times she nodded with understanding. Around them, the ballroom continued to sparkle with noise and motion, but in that corner, the world had gone still. It was as if the air around them had softened. The loud orchestra, the clinking glasses, the endless conversations, all of it faded into a distant blur. The only thing that existed in that moment was the gentle rhythm of hands and the unspoken warmth between two strangers who understood each other without a single word. After a while, Lila looked at Maya and signed, "You're the first person who talks to me like this." Maya's chest tightened. She replied softly, "People don't mean to ignore you. They just don't know how to listen." Lila tilted her head, studying her. Then, slowly, she reached for her cupcake, took a small bite, and smiled. A real, glowing smile that lit up her entire face. Maya couldn't help but grin back. It was such a simple moment, yet it felt monumental. For years, Lila had lived surrounded by people, but locked behind an invisible wall. Tonight, for the first time, someone had stepped through it. Maya noticed a small sketchbook lying on the table beside Lila. She pointed to it curiously, and Lila nodded eagerly. She flipped it open, showing page after page filled with delicate drawings, flowers, sunsets, and a picture of a man in a suit holding a little girl's hand. "That's my dad," Lila signed. "He's busy all the time, but I know he loves me." Maya looked at the drawing, then at Lila. The child's innocence cut through her heart. She thought of her own brother, how people used to pity him, thinking his silence was a tragedy. But to Maya, silence was never emptiness. It was another way to express beauty, one the world often failed to see. She reached out and gently signed, "You draw beautifully. You speak with colors." Lila giggled silently, her cheeks flushing pink. She signed back, "You speak with hands. That's beautiful too." In that instant, they both laughed, soundless, yet full of life. Across the room, no one noticed. The elite guests continued to toast and talk, unaware that the most meaningful conversation in the entire ballroom was happening without a single sound. Minutes passed like seconds. Maya forgot about her job, her exhaustion, the noise. Lila forgot about her loneliness. Two hearts had met halfway, one reaching out from silence, the other answering with understanding. When Maya finally stood up, her break nearly over, Lila grabbed her wrist gently and signed, "Will you come back?" Maya smiled, her eyes soft. "I promise," she signed. As she walked back toward the kitchen, she turned once more to glance at Lila. The girl was still smiling, cupcake half-eaten, eyes brighter than they had been all night. And in that crowded, glittering ballroom full of sound, the most powerful connection of all had been made, through silence. From across the hall, Mr. Donovan stood surrounded by powerful investors, his signature smile shining beneath the chandelier's golden light. His voice carried the authority of a man used to owning every room he entered. Deals were being discussed, laughter shared, champagne glasses clinking, all the sounds of success he had built his empire upon. But even as he spoke, his gaze drifted again and again toward the far end of the ballroom, toward a small figure sitting at the corner table. His daughter, Lila. She was supposed to be having fun. He had arranged everything to make her happy. The biggest cake, a dress made by one of Paris's finest designers, and a private nanny who shadowed her every move. But deep inside, he knew none of it ever really worked. Then he noticed something that made his words freeze in his throat. Lila was smiling. Not the polite, half-hearted smile she usually wore for photos, but a real one. Her face glowed, her eyes sparkled, and her hands moved quickly in signs he didn't understand. She looked alive. The sight struck him like a jolt. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen that expression. Maybe before her mother passed away. Maybe before silence became the language that separated them. He tried to focus on his conversation, but the numbers and voices blurred together. Every time he glanced over, Lila's laughterless joy kept pulling his attention like gravity. Finally, curiosity and a flicker of guilt won. Excusing himself from the investors, he adjusted his cufflinks and walked across the marble floor. His polished shoes echoed faintly as he approached the table. The moment Lila noticed him, her hands froze mid-motion. The light in her eyes dimmed slightly, replaced by the guarded look she always wore around adults. Her little shoulders tensed, and her hands dropped to her lap. "Sweetheart," he said awkwardly, trying to sound warm though his voice trembled. "Who's your friend?" Maya stood immediately, nearly dropping her tray. "Sir, I was just keeping her company," she said quickly, her tone respectful but nervous. Mr. Donovan's gaze shifted to her. There was no anger in his eyes, only confusion, and something softer, something searching. "You can sit," he said after a pause. "It's all right." But before Maya could respond, Lila tugged gently at her father's sleeve. Her hands moved rapidly, signing with urgency. Maya hesitated, glancing between them. She didn't want to overstep, but she could see the pleading in Lila's expression. So, softly, she interpreted. She said, "I like her. She talks with her hands like me." Mr. Donovan blinked. For a moment, he just stood there, speechless. Those words hit harder than any business deal ever could. His daughter had spent her life surrounded by people, but never someone who spoke her language. He felt a sting of guilt rise in his chest. He had built skyscrapers, negotiated with presidents, and managed thousands of employees across the globe. Yet he had never taken the time to learn how to talk to his own child. He cleared his throat, his voice suddenly gentler. "Maya," he said slowly, "would you stay for a bit longer? I think my daughter enjoys your company." Maya blinked, startled by the unexpected kindness in his tone. "Of course, sir," she said quietly, "if that's all right with you." "It is," he replied. "More than all right." He lingered for a moment, watching as Lila's face lit up again when Maya began signing once more. Her laughter, silent but full, filled a space inside him he hadn't realized was empty. For the first time, he saw her not as the fragile girl he needed to protect, but as a vibrant soul he had yet to truly know. His chest tightened as memories flashed through his mind, of the nights he spent working late instead of reading to her, the mornings when she reached for him, but he left for meetings, and all the times he'd assumed that expensive gifts could replace words he never spoke. He turned slightly toward Maya. "You said you learned sign language?" "Yes, sir," she replied. "My brother was born deaf. I wanted him to feel included." Something in her words struck him deeply. Included. That was the one thing he'd never managed to give his daughter, despite all his wealth. For the next few minutes, he stood quietly, watching. Lila's hands danced in the air as she told Maya about her drawings and her dreams of becoming an artist someday. Every gesture carried life and color. Maya responded with patience, her movements graceful, mirroring the girl's excitement. It was a conversation without sound, but somehow it was louder than any he'd ever heard. Mr. Donovan felt his throat tighten. When Maya finally looked up at him, he whispered, almost to himself, "She's happy." "She just needed someone to listen, sir," Maya said softly. He nodded, his jaw clenching as emotion welled inside him. "I suppose I never really tried to listen, not the right way." Maya didn't respond, but the silence between them said everything. After a long pause, he sighed and smiled faintly. "Thank you," he said, "for talking to her." Maya smiled back. "She's easy to talk to, sir. You just have to let her hands speak." As he walked back toward his guests, his heart carried a weight and warmth it hadn't felt in years. For the first time, the billionaire realized that the most valuable thing he could ever give his daughter wasn't money, gifts, or protection. It was understanding. After the party ended and the last of the guests drifted out into the cold New York night, the once lively ballroom grew eerily still. The chandeliers still shimmered above, but the laughter, the music, the clinking of glasses, all of it had faded. Only the faint hum of the air conditioning and the soft rustle of cleaning staff moving around remained. Maya stayed behind, as she always did. She slipped off her heels, her tired feet sighing in relief as she picked up napkins, folded tablecloths, and cleared empty glasses. She'd worked dozens of events like this one, extravagant celebrations where the wealthy came to shine and the workers blended into the background. But tonight felt different. Something about that little girl's smile, that quiet bond they shared, lingered in her heart like a song she couldn't forget. As Maya reached for another glass, she heard footsteps approaching from behind. When she turned, she was startled to see Mr. Donovan himself standing there, no longer surrounded by cameras or colleagues, no longer wearing that confident, commanding smile. He looked human. His tie was loosened, and there was a certain heaviness in his eyes that she hadn't noticed before. "You know sign language?" he asked quietly, his voice breaking the silence. Maya straightened. "Yes, sir," she replied, brushing a stray hair from her face. My younger brother was born deaf. I learned to communicate with him when he was little. It took me a while, but it's been worth every moment. Mr. Donovan nodded slowly, his gaze distant, as if he were seeing years of missed opportunities play before him. You have no idea what this means to me, he said after a pause. I've spent millions on Lila's treatments, tutors, and schools, everything the doctors recommended. But I never thought of learning to speak her way. His voice trembled, guilt slipping through his polished tone. I gave her everything except what she needed most. Maya set the tray down gently, her expression softening. Sir, she said in a calm, warm tone, Lila doesn't need expensive things. She just needs someone to understand her silence. Sometimes love isn't in words. It's in listening without them. For a long moment, Mr. Donovan didn't speak. He just looked around the ballroom, the tables scattered with empty glasses, the fading flowers, the half-eaten cake, all symbols of a perfect evening, and yet he felt hollow. He finally sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. You know, I always believed success was about providing the best. I thought if I gave her everything, comfort, safety, luxury, it would make up for what life took away. But every time I looked at her, she seemed distant. I thought it was because she was shy. I never realized it was because I didn't know how to reach her. Maya listened quietly, sensing the sincerity in his tone. She had seen this before, parents who loved deeply but didn't know how to show it in the way their child needed. After a moment, Mr. Donovan looked up, his eyes more determined now. Would you consider working as Lila's companion and teacher? He asked, almost hesitantly, as though afraid she might refuse. You seem to be the only one who truly understands her. Maya froze. Me? Sir, I'm just a part-time waitress. I'm not a professional teacher. He shook his head. That doesn't matter. What she needs isn't a professional. She needs someone patient, someone who makes her feel seen. You did that tonight in a way none of her tutors ever could. Maya hesitated. She thought about her small apartment, the rent due next week, and her younger brother who depended on her back home. A stable job could change everything for her. But it wasn't just about money. She glanced toward the doorway and saw Lila standing there in her little blue dress, holding her sketchbook to her chest. The girl wasn't smiling now. She was watching Maya with wide, pleading eyes. In that single look, Maya saw all the loneliness that child had endured and all the hope she now carried. And just like that, Maya knew she couldn't walk away. Her lips curved into a gentle smile. Yes, sir, she said softly. I'd love to. Lila's face brightened instantly. She ran over, throwing her small arms around Maya's waist. Though she didn't speak, the message was clear. Maya knelt, wrapping her arms around the girl, whispering, I'll be here, sweetheart. I promise. Mr. Donovan watched the scene silently, emotion rising in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of peace, fragile but real. As the three of them stood there, the billionaire, the waitress, and the silent child, the grand ballroom no longer felt cold or empty. It wasn't filled with laughter or applause, but with something far more precious, understanding. And in that quiet moment, Mr. Donovan realized that sometimes the richest people in the room are not the ones with money, but the ones who know how to listen. Weeks passed like a gentle melody in the Donovan mansion, each day weaving new threads of joy and understanding into their lives. The once lonely hallways that echoed only with silence were now filled with laughter, silent, yes, but brighter than any sound. Every morning, as the sun rose, Maya would step out of the cab and be greeted by the sight of Lila rushing toward her, her small arms wide open, her face glowing with excitement. They would spend their mornings in the art room, a bright, airy space filled with sunlight and half-finished canvases. Maya encouraged Lila to express her world through colors. Sometimes, Lila painted soft blues and pinks that looked like calm oceans. Other times, her brush would move wildly across the canvas, bursting with yellows and golds, the shades of newfound joy. Maya never corrected her. She simply watched, understanding that Lila's paintings were her voice. When they weren't painting, the two created stories together. Maya would write short tales about magical places and brave girls who could speak through their hearts. Lila would draw the scenes in vivid detail. Their favorite story was about a little bird who couldn't sing, but could make flowers bloom just by fluttering her wings. A story Lila said reminded her of herself. Mr. Donovan often watched them from his study, his heart softening at the sight. It amazed him how his daughter, once withdrawn and silent, now glowed with life. Her laughter, though soundless, seemed to fill every corner of the house. He'd sometimes see her signing to herself in front of the mirror, practicing new words that Maya had taught her. Eventually, Mr. Donovan began to sit in during their lessons. The first day, he sat stiffly, hands resting awkwardly on his knees. Maya smiled and encouraged him to try simple signs. Good morning. How are you? Thank you. He struggled, his fingers trembling with uncertainty. Lila giggled quietly, covering her mouth, but her eyes sparkled with pride. She reached out, gently repositioning his fingers until he got it right. That was the first time she had ever taught her father something. Day by day, their bond deepened. Every evening, after Maya left, Mr. Donovan would spend extra time practicing. His assistant once caught him in his office, repeating signs in front of a mirror. When she smiled knowingly, he simply said, "I'm learning to speak to my daughter." One evening, the three of them sat in the garden under soft golden lights. The wind rustled through the trees as fireflies danced around them. Lila suddenly touched her father's arm and began signing. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost reverent. Maya watched quietly, then smiled. She knew what Lila was saying. "I love you, Dad." Mr. Donovan froze. His eyes glistened with emotion as he turned to Maya for help, but she shook her head softly. "You know this one," she whispered. He hesitated, his hands trembling as he signed back, "I love you too." Lila's face lit up with pure joy, and she threw her arms around him. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he held her tightly, realizing that this silent exchange, was worth more than all the wealth he'd ever earned. In that moment, silence was no longer his enemy. It was a bridge, a sacred bond between father and daughter. Months later, another grand company event arrived, but this time the ballroom was filled with something new: hope. Instead of hiding in the corner, Lila stood confidently beside her father, dressed in a silver gown that shimmered under the lights. As the crowd quieted, she began to sign her welcome speech, her small hands moving gracefully, her expression radiant. Mr. Donovan stood beside her, mirroring her movements. The audience watched in awe as the powerful billionaire and his young daughter spoke without a single sound. The silence that once isolated them now united everyone in the room. When they finished, the entire hall erupted into applause, some clapping, others wiping away tears. From the back of the room, Maya watched, her heart swelling with pride. She had seen Lila transform from a lonely little girl into a confident, expressive soul who could move hearts without words. After the event, Mr. Donovan walked over to her, emotion heavy in his eyes. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice trembling. "You didn't just teach my daughter, you taught me. You gave me my family back." Maya smiled, glancing at Lila, who was signing happily with some guests. "No, sir," she said gently. She was never lost. She was just waiting for someone to listen, not with ears, but with heart. As the night ended, Mr. Donovan looked around his home. For years, it had been filled with luxury, yet felt unbearably empty. But now, even in silence, it was alive, with laughter, love, and a language that needed no sound. For the first time in years, the billionaire's mansion wasn't quiet anymore. It was full of the most beautiful music of all: understanding. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful video. Thanks for watching.